The Journey of Seeking Knowledge and Cultivation, reading Herman Melville's Two Mirrors, Bartleby the Scrivener and Billy Budd. As we navigate through life, we are often faced with numerous questions. Why do I live this way? Why is the world so unfair? Why can't others understand me? What significance do I hold in this society? At times, these questions seem vague and overwhelming to the point that we choose to ignore them. The words knowledge or cultivation can sometimes feel like high walls standing between us. However, in truth, knowledge and cultivation are not distant or exclusive to special individuals. They begin with the power to understand the world around us, empathize with others, and reflect deeply on our own lives. And one of the most powerful and beautiful ways to grow this power is through reading. Reading is the experience of entering someone else's life and gazing at the world through their eyes. It's like time travel or catching a glimpse into someone else's thoughts. The two stories I wish to introduce today, although written a long time ago, still pose deep questions to us. These are the works of the literary Herman Melville, Bartleby the Scrivener and Billy Budd. Despite their short length, these two works sharply portray the essence of human existence, the contradictions of society, and the complex emotions we encounter in our lives. Now, let's look together at the wisdom we can gain through these two stories. 1. I would prefer not to. The mysterious resistance in Bartleby the Scrivener. Bartleby the Scrivener is often ranked among Herman Melville's most unique and profound stories. This novel is set in a lawyer's office on Wall Street in New York. The pragmatic lawyer, who values money and efficiency, hires the quiet and diligent scrivener, Bartleby. Initially, Bartleby works enthusiastically, meeting the lawyer's expectations. However, one day, when the lawyer asks him to review documents, Bartleby gives an unexpected reply: I would prefer not to. This short and emotionless sentence completely upends the lawyer's world. Bartleby refuses to obey orders, yet he doesn't become angry or argue. He simply and resolutely declares his refusal to perform the task. Initially taken aback, the lawyer tries to understand Bartleby's behavior. Attempts to fire him fail, as Bartleby neither leaves the office nor causes a scene, merely sitting silently, pale-faced and staring at the wall. The lawyer cannot understand, persuade, or forcefully eject Bartleby. In the end, the lawyer chooses to move offices rather than keep Bartleby. But Bartleby, deprived of a place to go, ends up in prison on charges of vagrancy, where he quietly dies from refusing to eat. What can we learn from this story? The meaning of refusal. Bartleby's "I would prefer not to" is not a simple refusal. It is an act of rejecting the world merely by existing, without any logical reason. He completely rejects the values of productivity and efficiency that society demands. Many of you may have faced moments when you felt something was unreasonable or had to do something you didn't want to do. Bartleby's behavior demonstrates the most essential form of resistance against such a mandatory life. At times, silence and indifference can become the most powerful messages. The limits of human understanding. The lawyer makes all kinds of efforts to understand Bartleby, showing sympathy, getting angry, and trying to persuade him. Yet Bartleby never reveals his inner thoughts. This part shows how difficult it is for us to fully understand others. Sometimes human actions or thoughts may seem completely incomprehensible based on our common sense. Bartleby the Scrivener shows the human struggle when facing such an incomprehensible existence and the frustrations when even efforts to understand others fail. If you've ever felt misunderstandings or frustrations in your relationships, you will find the complexities of human connections reflected in the relationship between Bartleby and the lawyer. Alienation and isolation. Bartleby ultimately becomes alienated from the social system and meets death. He doesn't communicate with anyone and shows no desires. His existence symbolizes the increasing loneliness and isolation of individuals in modern society. Many people live alone, feeling lonely in their own places. Bartleby's story makes us reconsider those around us who are becoming isolated in our indifferent world and reminds us of the importance of human solidarity and communication. Bartleby's story does not offer ready answers. Instead, it raises questions to us. Questions such as: how am I living my life? How well do I understand others? And what do I truly want in my life? Through these questions, we can move beyond merely reading a story and into self-reflection and deeper understanding of the world. 2. The tragic conflict between justice and law in Billy Budd. Billy Budd is a work Herman Melville completed in the final years of his life and is concentrated with his literary depth and insight into humanity. The story takes place on a British warship during the late 18th century French Revolution. The protagonist, Billy Budd, is a young sailor with a pure and beautiful appearance. He is beloved by all as the handsome Billy Budd, but has one fatal flaw: he stutters when extremely nervous or angry, making him unable to express himself clearly. One day, a greedy and malicious ship's master named Claggart appears on the ship. Claggart envies Billy's purity and popularity and begins to harass him. Eventually, Claggart falsely accuses Billy of plotting rebellion. When Captain Vere hears Claggart's accusation and interrogates Billy, overwhelmed by Claggart's malevolent gaze and accusation, stutters and cannot properly explain his innocence. In a moment of rage, Billy strikes Claggart and kills him instantly. Captain Vere, who knows Billy's purity, is deeply troubled. Billy's act was clearly an act of self-defense without malice, but from a legal standpoint, he had committed the crime of murdering his superior, an act of rebellion. Especially in an era when naval mutinies were serious issues, Captain Vere was forced to make a terrible choice between his personal conscience and the duty he owed as an officer. Ultimately, Captain Vere sentences Billy to be hanged by naval law. Billy accepts his sentence calmly, and in his last words, he blesses Captain Vere before dying. What can we learn from this story? The collision between justice and law. Billy Budd's story clearly illustrates how deeply conflicting justice and law can be. We carry an innate sense of justice within us, recognizing right from wrong. However, the law created to maintain society can sometimes conflict with our sense of justice. Captain Vere, aware of Billy's innocence and purity, was still forced to execute him to uphold the legal system. You may have also encountered situations where something was legal but unjust or morally difficult to accept. This story challenges us to deeply consider which values we should prioritize in such situations and how we can balance law and morality. The clash between purity and malice. Billy Budd symbolizes a pure soul free of deceit and corruption. Conversely, Claggart is a character filled with jealousy and malice. The confrontation between these two characters reveals the fundamental conflict between good and evil in the world. Sometimes, it seems that pure goodness is trampled upon by evil without reason. Billy's tragic fate questions whether the world is just to the good and highlights the tragic reality that purity does not always win in the world. However, Billy's final blessing of Captain Vere paradoxically emphasizes the inherent beauty of purity. The weight of duty and responsibility. Captain Vere's anguish illustrates the heavy burden of duty and responsibility that a leader must carry. He must make a lonely decision weighing not only his personal conscience and human sympathy but also the order of the ship and the national interest. This story shows the harsh reality that a leader's decisions cannot be driven solely by personal feeling and that sometimes harsh sacrifices must be made for a greater cause. You may one day have to make difficult decisions for your family, organization, or a broader community. In those moments, Captain Vere's struggle can provide you with profound insight. Billy Budd's story makes us face a cold reality: life is not always fair. However, it also shows the nobility of the human soul that maintains purity even in the face of injustice and helps us recalibrate our moral compass within ourselves. 3. The connection between the two stories and wisdom for our lives. Although Bartleby the Scrivener and Billy Budd differ in their settings and characters, they share several common elements that reveal Herman Melville's deep insight into human existence and society. First, both stories portray incomprehensible beings. Bartleby's refusal without reason throws those around him into confusion, while Billy Budd's inability to express his innocence due to his stutter leads to tragedy. This shows how difficult it is for humans to fully understand one another. We often reject or criticize what we cannot understand. However, Melville seems to encourage us to discover the mystery and complexity of human existence within this incomprehensibility. Second, both stories share the common theme of the conflict between the individual and the system. Bartleby resists the efficiency system of capitalism, while Billy Budd is sacrificed by the strict naval law system. These two works reveal how fragile individuals can be in the face of vast social systems and how those systems can damage the dignity and human value of individuals. Nevertheless, Bartleby's passive resistance and Billy's calm acceptance suggest the importance of striving to maintain personal dignity within the system. Third, both stories end in tragic fashion, leaving a deep aftertaste. Bartleby quietly dies in prison, and Billy Budd is hanged. These tragic endings show us that life does not always end fairly or happily. However, such tragedy provokes readers to reflect more deeply on life's contradictions and injustices and to evoke human compassion and reflection. Reading the compass that draws a map of life. These two short stories by Herman Melville are not mere entertainment. They are powerful tools for confronting life's complex problems, exploring the human mind, and examining the hidden sides of the society in which we live. Some may say, reading is difficult and the stories feel unrelated to me, so it's not enjoyable. However, reading is not like schoolwork where you look for correct answers. Books do not force you to do anything. If you simply turn the pages slowly and listen to the author's story, you will eventually find a moment when you empathize with the emotions of the characters and feel as though their situation is a part of your own life. Reading Bartleby the Scrivener and Billy Budd reveals the realization that accumulating knowledge and cultivation is not a grand event. It is the training to think deeply about things happening around us or within our own hearts. Through these two works, you can gain the following. Expansion of empathy. Indirectly experiencing the struggles and choices of characters in the stories can help you understand the lives and emotions of others more broadly. This is helpful in communication and forming relationships in real life. Improvement of critical thinking. By following the questions and social issues posed by the author, you can develop your thinking by asking questions like what is truly right? And how should I think? And finding your own answers. Deepened understanding of oneself and the world. The conflicts and choices of characters in the stories often mirror our inner world and external reality. This allows for deeper self-understanding and insight into how the world works. Enhancement of language and expression skills. Consistently reading literary works naturally improves vocabulary and sentence structure. This not only improves the ability to speak well but also the ability to express thoughts and emotions clearly and effectively. Reading is more than gaining information. It cultivates the power to understand the world, empathize with others, and reflect on oneself. Knowledge and cultivation are not just a list of facts to fill your head, they are the wisdom and attitude to live in the world. I am confident that these two works by Herman Melville will serve as an excellent compass to take your first step. Take the courage to open a book. Inside, you will discover a new world you never knew existed, and in that world, you will gain the wisdom to live a richer and more meaningful life.